1. I'm curious as to whether anyone else has experienced memories of things and events that haven't happened, only to be confirmed later. I've had this happen twice, both involving places I'd never been. I have a vivid memory of being in Washington, D.C. with my aunt and her 2 children, my cousins. We were all little, maybe 6 or 7. We were looking at some t-shirts on the wall of a gift shop. A blue shirt with an eagle and an American flag caught my eye, and I picked it up to look at it closer. My aunt said she'd buy it for me, and I remember feeling really happy. That never happened, because I never took a trip to Washington, D.C. as a little kid. I'd never been there until last summer. One of my cousins was getting married, and that's where the wedding was because his wife was originally from there, and had a huge family who still lived there. Our family flew in a couple days before the wedding, and had some time to explore. 2 days before the wedding, I was out with my aunt and her kids, my cousins, walking down the street, when my cousin said she wanted to stop in a gift shop to look for a shot glass. She has a collection and buys one for every new place she goes. She's in there browsing around, and I find myself looking at some t-shirts on a wall. Didn't think anything of it, until I see the exact blue eagle t-shirt from what I've convinced myself was a dream. I pick it up, and I'm just staring at it in disbelief. Then my aunt walks over, takes it out of my hand, chuckles and goes, "I'm gonna buy this for you." It gave me chills. I have another vivid memory of sitting on a bench in Central Park in New York with my grandmother as a small child. She was sitting on my right and pointing at some flying birds before they settled into a tree just across from us. My grandmother passed away when I was 5. As I got older, I determined that the memory was false, and perhaps a dream I had confused. Because I had never been to New York, and from what my mother has said, neither had my grandmother. When I was 24, I had a job that allowed me to travel frequently. I had one free day in Manhattan before I had to report to the job site. I met up with a friend, Chris, who was living in Manhattan at the time. We went to the museum, got lunch, and then decided to take a walk through Central Park. At one point we saw a couple in a wedding tux and dress who were taking photos. Chris wanted to stop and watch, so we sat on the nearest bench. As my gaze shifted from the couple to the scene around me, I was taken aback because the scene was the exact memory I have, sitting with my grandmother, down to the birds flying into the tree. The only thing missing was my grandmother. I looked at the empty space to my right, where my grandmother was in the memory or dream, and was shocked to see a metal plate fixed to the bench with the words, "Terry liked to sit on this bench." Terry was my grandmother's name. I'm curious as to whether anyone has had similar experiences, and if so, I'd like to hear your stories. I have other vivid memories that I know have not happened, but they've not manifested in my life. 2. This story is quite personal, and it has been confirmed by numerous members of my family, which consists of very skeptical and straightforward persons, so I highly doubt that any details were made up for the sake of sensationalizing. Anyways, here it goes. My maternal grandfather was a very eccentric, intelligent man who knew how to make himself stand out. He had this charm and charisma that attracted everyone who would come in contact with him. I never met him in person. All I know about him comes from my mother and grandmother, and from the tales they've told me. He was quite a character. To keep it brief, my grandmother and grandfather had 2 daughters, my mother and my aunt. My aunt, the eldest, gave birth to 5 children, all of whom were born during the time my grandfather was still alive. My mother really wanted to become a mother. She really wanted a child, but due to some illnesses she had in her youth, many doctors said that it was quite impossible for her to get pregnant, or if she ever would, then high chances would be that she'd end up with a miscarriage, or with a baby with disabilities. She reached her 30s, and still no pregnancy. My mother, along with her parents, sort of lost hope by that point. One more important detail about my grandfather. He loved life and lived it to the fullest. He would oftenly engage in affairs, go to all the parties in town, and drinking and smoking were his most beloved vices. That's why when he reached his mid-60s, he got cirrhosis and, basically, the following 3 or 4 years of his life, which were his last, he was bound to the bed. All in all, with all his wild lifestyle, he was still quite a faithful man. And he knew that his end would be approaching soon. That's when things changed within him. He started talking, as my grandmother says, quite strange. He was a man that loved life so much that each and every night he would pray for his soul to not go to waste. He did not pray to be granted access to the heavens. Instead, he desired for his soul to stay on earth in a new body, to live once more. What he was basically praying for each day, as my grandmother tells me, was a sort of reincarnation, which does not belong to the principles of our religion, and was also a concept which my grandfather, earlier in his life, believed to be preposterous. But that's what he wanted. He probably thought that he wasn't done here in this world. Time after time, day after day, his illness got worse, and inevitably, he died. A lot of grief struck my family, especially my mother, who was extremely close to him. She suffered greatly because of his death, and thought she would never be able to get over it. But then, precisely 9 months after my grandfather's death, my mother found out she was pregnant. Her tears of grief were suddenly replaced by tears of joy, and her doctors, along with the rest of the family, who lost hope on her, were amazed. But probably the most peculiar event, which creates a very strange link between me and my grandfather, still puzzles me and my family, is this one. One day when my mother was around 4 months pregnant with me, she was lying on the bed, caressing her belly and talking to my grandmother, who was sitting next to her. All of a sudden, I kicked. That was the moment I first moved inside my mother's womb. As she felt it, my mother excitedly shared the news with my grandmother, and told her to feel the belly as well. My grandmother asked my mom what day it was, so they could remember it as the day when I made my first move. That's when they realized the day was the 27th of March, my grandfather's birthday. They both stood in silence, as they remembered my grandfather's last wish before passing away. Now, I do not know how to exactly interpret this. It may or may not just be a coincidence, but it still baffles me each time my mom reminds me of this story. One more important aspect would be that, as I grew up year by year, the similarities between me and my grandfather intensified. From little things such as facial expressions, particular gestures, and general behavior, even up to the mindset and personal opinions about different things. They all seem to imitate him. Not to mention that after my teenage years, I began assuming a quite crazy and frantic lifestyle as well. I'll not get into details here. Time after time, my mother was either shocked or amazed at how much our characters resemble, despite the fact we never met. This is my story. I'm not sure if it's a glitch or not, but it's still quite baffling to think about. I would have loved to meet my grandfather in person. I'm sure he would have loved me deeply, but I'm also quite sure that had he not passed away, I probably wouldn't be here. Because maybe, just maybe, I am his granted wish. 3. Firstly, since hearing about this thread, I've had a fascination with the idea of glitches, and how things may not be as they seem. I stumbled across the idea of synchronicity a couple of years ago as well, which furthered my fascinations and really helped me put a name to these weird, seemingly meaningful coincidences I would experience on a regular basis. The reason I have never posted before is because they were always minute or seemingly irrelevant occurrences. However, Lately my synchronicity radar has been going off the chain and added to the glitch that I'm about to share. I thought it was time to make my first post. So just before I get into the meat of the glitch, which I warn you is no Ruby Tuesday, I just want to share with you some synchronicities that have happened to me over the past couple of days, which may or may not have anything to do with it, but I still feel they are relevant. Number 1. The other night I had a dream involving a really old acquaintance who I do not speak with, do not see around or have any contact with whatsoever. He played a big part in my dream, which struck me as odd when I woke up, due to him being essentially erased from my life. Anyway, when I checked Facebook, it turns out that it was the guy's birthday, the only time I would ever acknowledge his existence, apart from the dream I had of him. Number 2. Another dream I had was of being in attendance for the new Grand Tour show with Jeremy Clarkson and the Top Gear gang, etc. This was another odd occurrence because I never really liked Top Gear, or Clarkson for that matter. Again, I woke up, checked Facebook, and there was a message in a group chat I'm in, with one lad asking if anybody was watching the Grand Tour. Another lad replied that he had been to the filming of one episode, which again spooked me out. I rationally understand that these could be subconscious lapses, or God forbid, a new Facebook marketing strategy. But it's still food for thought. Number 3. Finally, over the past couple of days, I've been noticing the song Have a Nice Day by the Stereophonics appearing everywhere. This is strange because it's not exactly a new song, and it's not in the charts, so you wouldn't expect to hear it so frequently. But it will be on in restaurants, shops, cafes, bars, pubs, etc. On top of this, I've started to notice the slogan Have a Nice Day on t-shirts, signs, posters, etc. This could all just be apophenia, which is the tendency to see connections between random or unrelated things, or my subconscious trying to pick up on positive vibes, but again, it's food for thought. Now to the glitch. So the other night, my friend S was having a housewarming party. She lives in the south of London, between 2 tube stations. I'm not trying to be too specific for privacy reasons, but as you move further away from central London, the tube stations become less frequent. I'm new to London, and also, thus, before leaving, I researched which was the nearest station I could get off at. As S lived in the middle of the two, I decided on one and got in touch with my friend K to say I would meet her. She said she would meet me at the other station, and I agreed, not telling her I would be getting off at a different station, as I just assumed I would catch up to her in the middle. I messed up. It didn't occur to me that the different boroughs in London are big places, and it turned out that the station that K got off at was actually closer to S's than the station that I got off at. She had a 10-minute walk, whereas I had a 40-minute walk. To top it all off, the rain was absolutely coming down, and though I had an umbrella, the wind was so severe that it was practically useless. Instead of holding it above my head, I was using it in front of me as a barrier against the gust. So I start walking, and give Kay a quick message, telling her I mugged it, and that she's better off going to S's and I'll just see her there. She's texting me back, calling me a melon, but because I have my hands full holding this umbrella and battling the elements, all the while trying to check the maps on my phone, I don't bother texting back. It was an absolute nightmare. The world was against me, and I just focused on getting to this house that was 40 minutes away. Anyway, halfway there, I start getting these texts from Kay. Why aren't I answering my phone when it's raining outside? I told her I'm not there yet, assuming she's trying to get in the house, and nobody can hear her knocking. She texts back, asking where I am, confused, and then asks who was the girl I was with. I tell her I'm alone, still walking to this fucking house, and that it wasn't me, and put my phone in my pocket. I was on the final stretch and adamant to reach my destination. After what seemed like an eternity, you're probably thinking the same about this post, I eventually arrived and all was well. I did the obligatory greetings, got myself a drink, and sat down next to Kay. She starts asking me all these questions about the people I was with, and I'm still trying to tell her that I was walking alone. This is when she tells me that I answered my phone and spoke to her, while some girl or something was chatting in the background. I told her I didn't answer my phone. I couldn't even have pocket answered by accident, because not only was I using it for maps every 2 seconds, I also had my earphones in, so would have heard the ring even if I missed the vibration. She says that she definitely rang and spoke to someone, so I dismiss it as her calling the wrong number. That's when she pulls out her phone and shows her call log, 857 answered by my number. I get up my call log to prove her wrong, and find that I answered a call at 8:57 from her number. I swear to God, I never answered that phone. I couldn't even have pocket answered. And even if so, it would just have been muffled noises. Who the fuck did she speak to? 4. This happened when I was around 10 or 11 years old. I just spent the day at school and was walking to my mum's car. She always parked in the same spot in my drop-off area. I grew up in rural Western Australia, and my primary school was pretty small, so everyone had their own parking spot saved every day in a silent agreement with other parents. As I'm walking to where my mum usually parks, I see her talking to another parent, just next to the school bus. She waves me over and tells me to go wait by the car, which she says is around the corner of a bend in the road, invisible to me from where we were standing. It's not her usual spot, but I think nothing of it. I stop to get a drink out of my bag or something, keep walking to where my mum pointed, only to see my mum pop up in our car and park in the usual spot. I look back to the bus, but my mum is not there, nor is the parent she was talking to. I'm confused and ask her how she got to the car so fast, to which she replies that she only just arrived and apologizes for being late. I tell her I'd just seen her by the bus, and she tells me it's impossible, she only just arrived. She seems a bit more shaken up than me, probably more at the prospect of somebody masquerading as my mother and being a possible kidnapper. Also worth noting that my mother and my actual mother were wearing identical outfits. Also of note is that it would have been physically impossible for my mum to have sprinted past me incognito to get to the car and drive it back to the spot in the 20 seconds since I'd last seen her. Any thoughts? I'm a pretty skeptical guy, although I've had a lifelong interest in stuff like this, and the supernatural. My mother is deeply spiritual, although agnostic, and regularly sees psychics, speaks to spirit guides, and often gives me frighteningly accurate psychic readings of my inner thoughts or what's going on in my life. I was never really frightened or spooked by what happened. Rather, I retained it with some interest as one of the few supernatural incidents from my life. 5. It happened only a couple of days ago. It's not really creepy, to some, but it always makes me feel there's other universes like ours, but a bit different in ways. Anyway, sorry for the rambling. I just got home from work earlier in the day. I was arguing with my fiancée. We argued about what every couple argues about. Attention, apparently. Sorry if it seems like more rambling, but it will become apparent in a bit. Well, we made up later on as the night came. Being lovey. She was texting me about how she was upset with her friend acting dumb with her because she was coming home. I asked her why. Afterwards, I got a message back saying how selfish and fucked or messed up I am, and that I should live with my friends if I want. She doesn't care anymore. But the last few sentences was what confused me the most, beyond the random lash-out. It said that I'll see you guys later. Then he said something under his breath, and I was like, whatever, I don't even care. It was in the same message as the one she was telling me of. I called her in confusion, asking why she got mad at me again after we were all loving. She had no idea what I was talking about, and was walking inside from parking the car. I thought she was messing with my head or something. I showed her the message and she was shocked, then showed me her phone with what she actually sent. The message she sent me was completely different from the one I received, except for the last few sentences that confused me the most. It was from her phone. We even checked the message history to find a message like that, but came up with nothing. I think it could have been a glitch from my universe to another like mine, where me and my fiancée kept fighting all night. Just creepy to think about mostly. What do you think it could have been? Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Glitch in the Matrix Stories 19. Thank you very much to everyone who sent their stories in for this video. The final story there just happens to be a subscriber story. I'm sitting here trying to get this video recorded and I keep hearing a dog yipping in the distance. I think I managed to cut most of it out, but if you can hear any little yips that I've missed, I'm not adding in sound effects, it's just the little pooper won't shut up. I'm sitting here recording, debating whether or not I'm getting takeaway, or takeout, whatever you prefer to call it. Because it looks like I might actually be done by the time the places are still open for a change. Usually I get hungry just as they're all closed. Decisions. Trying to get weight off this year. Big plate of chow mein isn't going to help with that. But it's so very yummy. Ah well, okay, I've got another video to record, so plenty of time to ruminate on that. And with that, I think I'm going to head off for now, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.